Hi. After all this mess, now let's start. Monitoring. When do we start? Now, a short show of hands. Who's a developer? Who's a system admin? There you go. Who's a developer? You're not going to like what I'm going to say. Who's a system admin? You're going to like what I'm going to say. Who am I? My name is Asaf Lato. I've been working in IT since '99. Part of the Icinga team since 2011. Oh, I have it here. I don't have to turn around. That's better. Right. I'm the Icinga partner in Israel, Blaine, and in the UK. I know you left. The UK left, but don't hold it against me. I'm Nago certified. Long time ago, people worked with it. They came to me. They wanted me to ask you want to be certified? I said, well, I'm certifiable anyway. Fine. I'm a dog lover, as you can see by my icon. I'm a whiskey connoisseur. I love whiskey. Anybody want to ask me questions about what not to drink, I can tell you. And I'm cycling, which is something I assume you all love in this country because it's flat and I wish I could cycle, but didn't have time because I'm here. Right, developers. You all know the paradigm about test-led development, right? You write your code, you write your testing, and you submit it to the CI. So you say it's tested and you can send it into production. Not really. We just saw it today, and it's development. DevOps, infrastructure as a code. You break your infrastructure by introducing bugs. When do most companies start monitoring? That's a very, very, very important question. When a client calls about a problem, you say, oh, we don't know. We never bothered that. We never asked. We never checked. When you go into pre-production, usually you want to know how your system is acting. When you're going into production, most of the time people say, oh, we're going to production, we need to know how the system is going to behave. Or when the management is saying we need an SLA, how are we responding, how are we behaving compared to how our product's supposed to go? Is that the right time to go? No, because what you want to do when you're monitoring is be proactive. You don't want to be reactive to what the environment is telling you. You want to be able to tell the client, oh, listen, there's going to be an issue with X and Y in about 20 minutes. We're on it. Don't worry. You're not going to be infected. Why do you need it? I just told you, you don't want the client to be upset. But you also don't want to see that when you're going into production, because that means your application has died. You want to know the state of the server. You want to know the state of the services you're handling. You want to be able to anticipate the issues. You want to gather the behavioral impact of the system that you're running. And you want to learn about the bottlenecks that you have in the environment, because who hasn't encountered the fact that, oh, we're just adding a new feature. Wait a minute, the network can't support it because it introduced another, 200, 300,000 calls to the API or to the database, and the pipeline, the database is fine, but the network card is just saturated and we have a broadcast storm because of all that. Who hasn't encountered that? Lucky you. Tracking the changes when it happens in the system. Monitoring will give you that, because when you do it the proper way, you will encounter them in your test environment, in your developing environment, and you'll never see this one. If you've never seen this one when you're working on the Linux environment, man, you have been lucky. This basically tells you, pack it up, go home, you need to reboot, and the client is really, really pissed. If you can't read what it says in the bottom, it says kernel panic. So system is dead. There's no recovering from that one. You can't do a restart, you have to reboot the system. That means you lost with everything. So when should you start monitoring? When do you guys do this? Do you start at the QA stage? Do you start when you're load testing? Do you start end-to-end testing? Is that the proper time to put your monitoring in? Or when you're doing the staging? Is that the proper time to start your monitoring? What do you think, guys? Okay, things that happen when we hit production. 100% load on the CPU, system is overloaded. A spike in your interaction with the system, because you never planned for it. You never expected the traffic to be mounted as such. In many cases, you're working on a data set or 200 hits on your code. This is when you get 2 millions. All of a sudden, the system is shouting. Monitoring starts at day 2. Day 1, you built a company. You decided on a concept. You started writing code day 1. Day 2 is when you should start monitoring. Because this sometimes happens. User attempts to use your software in a manner it's supposed to happen, and it crashes. If you started monitoring that when you started writing the code, you would have figured it out as you submitted your code and compiled it and tested it on your own. which is what this talk is about. It's what I call metric-led development. Instead of just writing your code and your test, you're writing your monitoring plugin. It's basically another 5 lines of code for most of you, the developers, not the admins. But it shifts the development of the monitoring into the cycle of CI and into the production, into the development cycle. Because when you integrate the test, you're testing if the functionality works and you have the monitoring, which allows you that situation when you're coming into the testing. You see if the code is working properly and you see what the impact that you get on your system. Because if a system gets disconnected, or basically you're loading up your CPU from a new feature or a new application, you want to get it as soon as possible. And that's in the CI stage, not in when you're in pre-production, staging, or anywhere else. Hopefully never in production. The question is, what do you want to monitor? I'll explain this picture in a minute for those of you who don't understand what it is. But you need to decide what do you want to monitor, because there's so many things that work in your infrastructure or in your development environment. But do you want to monitor the laptops of the users? Do you want to monitor the servers, the switch? Yes, but the printers, the storage, the VoIP phones, the PBX, we need to define it. Now I'm coming to this one. If anybody hasn't followed the scientific community about 6 months ago, this is basically the thickest liquid in the world, thickest substance. In the last 60-odd years, it dropped 3 drops. I don't think we need to monitor that, but this is just an example of what you don't need to monitor or what you don't need to change. For instance, you don't want to monitor your printers. The printer doesn't work, somebody will come and complain, but you don't need an alert at 4 a.m. in the morning, oh, we're out of paper. Right? So need to know what you want to include in your scope, but software you need to include. And this brings me to this story of anybody heard of this project in the BBC? No. Good. You shouldn't. A project that was supposed to transfer the physical archives of the BBC, about 60 miles of shelf space, into digital archives. I was brought in to make a monitoring solution. At the time, it was Nagios. They had Xenos, based on SNMP, but Xenos had the lovely feature that if you want dependencies, which is for Icinga or Nagios, built-in bread and butter kind of solution, you have to wait for the next version, and then you have to buy the added module that brings you the capability of using dependencies. They heard about that, they said, scrap that, we're moving to, at the time it was Nagios, Icinga was in its infant, I think Brent was just in the concept, I think it was 2010. It wasn't as mature and well known at the time. I wasn't involved in, so I think it was 2009. Anyway, when I proposed this thing at the time, there wasn't a thought. They thought Nagios because they wanted eventually to buy the support. They dropped that one because of budgetary issue. Never mind that. I had to set up the management of that one. It was a very complex setup. In Icinga 2, it would have been easy as hell to set it up. It was zones and everything. Over there, we had 3 data centers distributed in 3 regions in the UK, with 12 satellite sites and basically, if I remember correctly, almost 12,000 hosts to monitor. Forget about the services, I don't want to go in there. But when did they decide to put that in? In development stage? No. This was 2 weeks before they decided to go into pre-production. They decided to switch the monitoring application into something new, and we had to develop all the monitoring, all the infrastructure, and all the plugins during that time. It took me a year to set it up. Then I light it up, and I told them, all right, we have the first stage, first data center monitored. Do you want to, and they said, all right, we want to get the alerts. I said, no, you don't. No, you don't. This is not production ready. Has so many holes in it, you can fly the Titanic through it. They said, no, light it up, and set up that the management gets all the alerts, because we want to see that. Yes, exactly. How many minutes, when I'm saying minutes, after I started the alerts, they came back to me and said, turn it off. Take a guess.
4, 5.
20. How many emails have they got? 14,000. It basically blocked the entire mail servers for the servers, for them, and they couldn't work. They kept getting it. They came to me 20 minutes. It took them 20 minutes to walk down to my office and say, please plug it off. I couldn't get an email. They couldn't send an email. They were just being flooded with emails. We turned it off, and then I told them, okay, we need to streamline it and bring it into the developers so they can write the plugins of what to monitor and when, because I can't write the plugins for everything that you want to do. There are about 60 different components, all of them integrated with something called DB2, if some of you remember that one. Ouch. Yes. And of course, I stayed there. I built them the infrastructure. I didn't build all the plugins. After a year, I left the contract. And a year and a half afterwards, the project shut down because of budgetary. They spent £100 million and got nowhere. Nowhere. So this is how you don't want to do this. You want to set up your monitoring and decide on the product and what you monitor before you start developing, before you build your infrastructure. Which tool? Yes, I know there are enemies here, that's fine, but not every place will go with what we love. They will select different tools. Some tools are better for some things, some tools are worse, but there are so many tools to select from, so which one do you select? Yes, we're biased here, but I know some other places will think of some other tool to use. Which one to use? You do the market research. That's for granted. And then you have to decide about the budgets. You use an external service. You can buy, there's Logs.io that can give you your Elasticsearch as a SaaS. You can buy, which one is it that allows you, there's services that can do the monitoring external to you. You can hire external consultants like All in Data and myself, and I'm sure there are others here. Or you can build a full NOC. But most places have a problem with that. If you're a small startup, this is your budget. You can't afford all those, so you need to build it in-house. And now most people will think, oh, but I need to have the resources, and I need to spend, I want to buy, if I need to buy servers, I need to do it for the developers so they can develop. I'm going to pause on that one, let you think, and let's talk to Sky. Sky is another place I worked and implemented the solution. When I went in there, again, they didn't know what to monitor and how to monitor. We were getting 1,800 alerts a night. What would happen if you get, I'm talking about the sysadmin now, what would happen if you get 1,800 alerts a night? How useful is your system, is your monitoring system? You can do that more pronouncedly. Basically, you take the whatever you get as a on-call device, chuck it in the bin and go to sleep, right? Because otherwise you won't sleep and you just keep buzzing and you ignore it. So that comes back to the fact of how do you monitor and what do you monitor? Over there they monitored everything, every flapping alert we used to go on and everything. When I finished filtering through it, we used to get 3 alerts a night max. And they didn't have dependencies, they didn't have parenting, they didn't have anything. Everything, just chuck it in, somebody will swim. During the day, we used to get more. But during the day, we just looked at the monitor and didn't care about the pager. But there, they decided, and when we decided to revenue this, I was in the phases of pushing Icinga one at a time. Two wasn't mature enough, replacing the old Nagios. I got a call from my colleagues there about 2 weeks ago about a problem they have. I told them just do that, and that's it. They're being very happy with Icinga 1 because they weren't monitoring with production, and they don't have the virtualization approval to use to go to Icinga 2, so they're sticking with the 1. Now, capabilities. When you're selecting your monitoring tool, what capabilities do you want to do? Do you want it to have you want to do it with SNMP because you're using network appliances? Do you want high availability, active, passive? All the things that we want to test, we have to decide before in advance. I'm using Scotty because I always love this phrase, always use the right tool, the right job. If you're picking the tool that doesn't match your requirements, you'll be complaining, you'll be crying at nights, which is what happened in the BBC, remember? They used Xenos, then we moved to Nagios. Or you have to spend much more money. One of the other things you want to provide when you're thinking about a solution, how do you support it? Do you buy it? Again, comes to a budget. Or do you use the community support? Community support is a wonderful thing. We all live through it. I think at Nagios, we all have done it. But the problem with this community support is you rely on the kindness of others. If, and you excuse my French, if you're a moron or an asshole, you basically get nothing. If you come into an IRC channel or mailing list and demand everybody answer to you because you're the best thing in the world and everybody should bow down before you, you'll basically end up knowing nothing and getting nothing, which is bad for you. But if you, so relying on the kindness of others for some people does work. Therefore, they have to buy the professional, and professional costs quite a bit, which brings us again to the budget. When you're coming to your CEO and saying, "I need to buy this product and this is support," and you just look at the budget and say, "No." Use the tool you know is always a good thing. If there's a tool you know, you love, you know that you can do the functionality for it, run with it. Don't even ask twice. Don't even ask permission. I'll show you why you can do that without having to worry about your CEO, because then you can't lose. All you get is you get the data and you can provide your superiors in the work about, here's the factual data of the information I've gathered from the monitoring, even at the development stage, about how the system is going to behave when we take it into, or extrapolate into production. Most times they can't argue because you have actual facts. Against, now this is the waste of dev time, and I'm going to go to that in a minute, and will not be in the real product. We want the developers to write the plugins. We want them to do that. Why? Because they know, and I'm coming to that in a minute. And the CEO and your VP R&D and the CTO will all say, no, this is a waste of their time. You need to explain to them that it's not a waste of their time, it's a saving time for everybody else. Why is it easy to start? All of these, except for AWS and Google, don't require any money expenditure from the company. You can build it on your own laptop, and you can have a Nagios, Icinga, whatever you want, on your laptop, monitoring your infrastructure in a matter of minutes, especially if you're working with Puppet, as Walter just showed you. You can, not in the demo, but in real life. You can monitor it. You can head your host. If you're working with Ansible, there's the Ansible cookbook. If you're working with Chef, we'll get to that one later. But you'll get everything you want. You can, and if you have the Dockers, you can just set it up, and in 5 minutes, you have a monitoring solution that can monitor your development. Especially if you're a developer, you want Icinga on your local machine, monitoring how your code is behaving. You bring up the Docker, you're monitoring your own code, and you have the facts, and basically you can give that to whomever, saying, all right, this is the behavior I'm seeing for my feature on the platform. This is what we need to worry about. Monitoring hooks, basically the plugins, like I said, who knows the system better? It's most often the person that wrote it. That's the developer. That's why you want the developer to build the plugin for your system, for your monitoring. And all he does, for him, it's going to be much easier. They're better programmers than us, than the sysadmins. That's why they're programmers, they're not sysadmins. Whatever will take us about an hour to write, they can do it 5 minutes sometimes. Or for us, it will take a day, because we need to understand the innards of the code that we want to monitor. They know it already because they wrote it, so all they have to do is write a couple more lines, and therefore they have a plugin that they can send it to us, and we can incorporate it in the system. How involved are they in the process? Usually. Developers, raise your hands, please. How involved are you in the monitoring process in your companies?
Well, pretty much. I'm here, right?
Did you write the plugins? Do you write the plugins for your code?
I did.
Yeah. So you're the exception of the rule. In most companies, developers do not write the codes to monitor their plugins. It's basically, oh, there's a new feature. Yeah, you guys handle the monitoring. Am I right? Tell me if in your company it's not like that. Yeah, we wrote a new feature. Yeah, you can monitor it. So that's not the way to go. The way to go is the developer is handing a new piece of code. It's pushing it into the CI, and as long as he's pushing the test into the CI, and he should push in the Git code, also the plugin to monitor the code and give you the responses. So this is what it's supposed to look like at the end, basically. You get the code, it goes into the GitHub, it's being tested. Hopefully it won't be critical, but it will give you a response, and then you can get the information and say, all right, we extrapolate it, and we can tell you what it's going to be the impact in the environment and production. So the conclusions. Oh yeah, I did it right. Start monitoring early. Early is in development stages, not in pre-production, not in staging, not in CI, in development. You're developing, you're pushing code, test it. Give us the information, give us the performance data of how the system behaves related to that code. Sorry, yes, everybody said it's too early. Involve development in the monitoring. I've already said that. I'm going to iterate it, and I'm going to iterate it until it actually sinks in. Make it part of the CI, which I've said already. You need to test it, test it, and test it. If you don't put it into continuous integration, you're basically losing it. Because no offense to anybody who's writing code, I don't trust developers. You're introducing bugs. Infrastructure as a code is a bad idea. Introducing bug into the infrastructure is always bad. And I'm a DevOps. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm saying. Sorry. Doing, never. Gather as much data as possible, as early as possible. Like I said, you get that data, you have a data set of 20 servers in testing, in pre-production, whatever. You get the data, you accumulate it. Then you say, all right, in production I have 200 servers. So you do the extrapolation, you can evaluate the bottlenecks that will be generated in the network, how the servers are going to react, what the database is going to look like, how much disk space you need for that data set. All of these you can extrapolate from the basic information that you gathered as you developed it. Expose the data to management. That's the best thing. You make a nice little graph, which is going to be another talk in a minute about graphs. You get the graph, you show them, right, this is what's the impact in development and in QA. We have this amount of servers, and this is what it's going to do when it gets to production. Usually, if you do it right, they will give, oh, we need that much more money, we need that much more personnel, and they will oblige you with what the requirements you need. Because whatever the management are, they're not stupid about the fact that they're going to lose clients if they don't get the information or the service or the product done properly. And always highlight any abnormal occurrences, which is what you can see if you're testing properly and monitoring properly. Questions? And my contact details in the back, so I'm not going to go over them. You can read them. Questions? Wow. Okay. Yes?
In what kind of environment do you monitoring the first stage monitoring plugins?
Sorry, I didn't listen.
In what kind of stage, in what kind of environment do you monitoring your development plugins in your production environment? Or?
No, when I'm implementing it, I'm basically building the development environment. It can be AWS, it can be bare metal, it's anywhere. And I have of course, Icinga instance that's being incorporated. Every time I raise a new server, it's incorporated into the Icinga monitoring, and every change that goes on there, I'm aware of it. I'm pushing on my developers to incorporate test into the CI, because the CI is also doing the actions on those servers. And sometimes when I'm feeling really nasty, we don't work in GitHub. In most places, we work with a local Git. So I have the final approval on the Git branch that goes in. And if I don't see a monitoring plugin, I basically reject the code.
So have you?
But that's me being strict. Don't enforce that in everywhere. That's just where I can control it. That's me. Yes, sorry.
Do you have on every phase a new Icinga setup?
No. Well, you can. I don't do that. I have one for development. We have one for production. If we don't.
And the pre-production?
Pre-production, we don't have environment at the moment. Development is a pre-production. The product that I'm working with right now, the production value is a shelf product, so it's not a SaaS. So basically, we're just working for stability and data set. Like I said, this is why I'm taking the data set. The data set we're applying in development is a 2 gig. 2 gig? Yes, 2 gig data set of files that we're doing our calculation and arithmetics and everything like that. Well, we know that the client data set is 1 terabyte. So we're taking the 2 gigabytes, doing the calculation, doing what the impact of the features are on those data sets, and then we do the extrapolation and data, what would the effects of be of a 1 terabyte data set on those calculations, and how it's going to affect the overall system. And then we tell the client, all right, if you're going to do that and that, this is the kind of hardware you need, this is the bottlenecks, this is the streamlining of the JVM and everything that you need to do, and we actually do it for him, but we know before we actually go to the client what needs to be done, so when he's trying to use the application, it doesn't get too many open files, or basically system is out of resources. I know it's a unique case because we're not a SaaS, but yes, in your environment, you would want a development, pre-production, separate monitoring solutions, because they're going to give you different data. And production, of course, has to be unique and isolated from any of those. If it's not, that's a problem. Even in one environment, we had separate Puppet, or actually Chef, separated for the dev and the pre-prod, and separated for the production. Just in case something filters through, we separated. But for monitoring, yes, you have to separate them. Yes. Anything else? Yes.
So, do you need to have running infrastructure to be able to deploy it?
Not necessarily.
Because your point there with having CI alongside monitoring implies that monitoring is monitoring the running infrastructure, and that you have to have something there for you to be able to monitor against. So,
On your laptop. You're writing the code, you're testing it on your laptop. Run the Docker on your laptop. If you have a CI, yes, that means you have some infrastructure. Because where are you running your CI process?
yeah, but CI is building binary artifacts that are going to deploy.
Not just. CI also means you're testing, continuous testing, it's the integration. So you have some sort of appliance that does that. It can be on your laptop, it could be on your on an AWS instance, it could be on a bare metal, could be on the desktop or somebody else's laptop. But wherever it is, you should put the monitoring solution also, so it'll gather the information about those testing and the impact it has on the system. If you're doing only testing on your laptop, like I said, bring up the Docker, use VM, use Vagrant, use a Zen VM, bring it up, use your monitoring, test it. It's not expensive anymore. People used to, in the old days, people think monitoring would be expensive. You need a new server, you need more hardware, you need everything. Today, it's not. Use a Docker, bring up Icinga with a Docker. It's just a process running, but you get the data that you need, the performance data, and then you can extrapolate from there. It's not expensive, it's not hard anymore.
Sorry, the point of my question was, why would I use it? I have the infrastructure, but you're talking about monitoring for performance, not for testing.
Monitoring is not for, yes, it is for testing, because you want to test the implication or the effects the new code that you're putting in has on the system and on other factors.
But how would that differ then from CI? So if I build a CI setup, especially in the, say, distributed set system,
Yeah.
then I'm already building tools that are going to test the interface, for example, of my service.
Yes.
I don't want the developer to do that, quite literally, because they wrote the code. So therefore, they shouldn't be the ones testing the interface.
They're testing.
With Icinga, or
Sorry, they wrote the code, but are they aware of the implication of it on the system on a larger scale?
oh, okay. So you're still then talking about you have to have the infrastructure in place running somewhere for you to be able to see the consequences.
Yes.
of deployment.
Yes, you can see, even if you write the code and run it on your laptop, if you have some horrendous feature that you haven't written it with the safeguards, it'll eat up your resources on your laptop. But then you can think, oh, this is a one-time occurrence, something was wrong. You reboot the laptop, you run it again, and you're not sure. But if you have the monitoring for that, you'll know what happened, and you can see the impact. If you do it consistently on different servers, and you can see that, you'll see the impact. You get it better understanding of what the problem is and how it's going to affect when you push it into the wild, i.e. production. So you want it tested on your production, because nothing runs in isolation anymore. No code is running in isolation.
Correct, but my use case might be a bit.
So we can discuss it after, if you want. Yes, anything else? Anybody else? No? Okay. No, I'm going the wrong way. So if you have any questions, you can always contact me in either one of those. Thank you. Mm-hmm.